Hey guys, this is Health, your medical astrologist, and today we're going to be speaking about the four humors and the four biles or the four temperament. But first, before we start breaking down the four humors and the four biles, how they play out physically, first we have to understand how do they connect to the four elements. You have to understand the realm of psychology and the realm of biology: speculative, operative, yin, yang, masculine, feminine. Why do I say that? I say that is because it's so important to understand how things works in our mental realm, our internal reality first, then how it plays out physically, it plays out operatively, it plays out in physical reality. But first we have to understand how these things work out in our internal body, in our mind first, and how does the spirit or the observer utilize these elements to create. So the fire element represents your imagination, your vision, your intuition. When you close your eyes and you see that flaming bush, this is the Moses allegory where Moses was speaking to God, which is essentially you speaking to your imagination, your vision. When you have a vision, this is you speaking to God. Air represented communication, knowledge, networking, writing, ideas, thoughts, things of that nature. Water representing connection, fluidity, feeling other people, understanding other people, putting ourselves in other people's shoes, and things of that nature. Earth represented a manifestation, structure, what makes sense, what we could touch physically. So essentially these four, we as spirits and observers, we mix these elements from a speculative point of view first, then these elements play out physically, operatively. But first, you have to understand how they all play out together. So when you sit back and have a vision and imagination, you kind of start adding water to it. And you don't necessarily do these things with order, but you have to kind of utilize the element in certain order to get the most benefit out of it. So the first element, you gotta utilize fire. You gotta have come up with a vision and imagination. And then you gotta add water, connect to it emotionally, connect emotionally to your goal. This is why it's important to utilize the water element after the fire element, because a lot of us, we come up with visions, imagination, but we don't feel emotionally connected to it because we don't utilize the water element. This is why it's important to utilize the fire element, but also learn how to add water so you feel emotionally connected to it. You don't want to be that person who just have a lot of visions, but you don't want to feel connected to any of them, because this will not lead you to actually manifesting them physically. Because after you're able to come up with a vision, fire, and then connect to it emotionally, this is you mixing fire and air, which is fire and water, which create the air element. So right now, the fire and water, they're fighting. Now this creates a cloud, air, thoughts and ideas. So right now, you're thinking, you're debating, you're networking, you're communicating, you're writing, and things of that nature. This is why the air element is so important. Air element is important because if we don't express or communicate about our visions, our ideas, our imagination, or our emotions, we will never get to physically manifest our fire, our imaginations. This is why the air element is so important. So it allows us to communicate, to think logically. Our mind is technically you could see it as the air element. You could literally see your own thoughts as clouds that's crossing you as the observer and things of that nature. After we get the air element and we sit there in our air element, think, communicate, network, use the power of the pen, writing, and things of that nature. And we do this for a very long time. What's gonna happen? We're gonna take the air element, the heaven, we're gonna bring it down to reality. We're gonna manifest our heaven. AKA in the Bible, what do they say? They say bring heaven, your thoughts, your realm of thinking, to earth, physical reality, the element of earth. But for you to get there, you have to go through fire, imagination, water, connect to it. Now that evaporate, that becomes air. Now take that air, pay attention to it for a long time, communicate it, network with other people, find more information. Then that air will condense itself, becomes physical reality, aka bring heaven to earth. So it's very important to understand how these elements work within your psychology. You as a spirit and observer, you utilize them all the time, but you don't realize that. You just gotta sit back, meditate, slow down your mind activity, and you're gonna see what I'm talking about. And especially if you're into astrology, you will really understand what I'm talking about, because you actually know your elements, you know your modality, you know your alignments, and things of that nature. So definitely learn how to mix all these elements together to create this hard idea, a business idea, your life, your vision, your plan for the future. Because a lot of us, we utilize one element from a speculative point of view more than the other element. Some of us have a lot of visions, but we don't have to communicate, or we don't feel emotionally connected to. A lot of us are practical and money orientated, but we don't have an imagination. We don't have a communication skills. A lot of us are water dominant, just emotionally lost in our own emotion and what's happening in the world. So we gotta learn how to add fire to our water, so we evaporate our water and things of that nature. And once you get what I'm talking about, you can sit back and play with these elements within your mind. But once you know what you're doing with internally first, then you could really do some magic. You could do really some alchemy. But first you have to learn how things work from the speculative mental realm, then the operative physical realm. So essentially the four humors is the theory they came up with back then in that world, in the ancient world. We still utilize it to this day. This is why it's important to keep it. They understood this theory. It allowed them to figure out what health issues a person goes through depending on what element is dominant in. Because they noticed fire people, they go through different health issues. Air dominant people, they go through different health issues. Water dominant people, they go through different health issues. And earth dominant people, they go through different health issues. They seen how the psychological factors, the mental factors, what goes inside us affect the biological, operative, yang, physical world. This is why they always say, and you always hear it, as within, so without, as above, so below. Or like though the Parliament like to say, it's about distance and closeness, but this is a whole nother topic. So back then in the ancient world, they called fire dominant people caloric, and they were associated with the yellow bile. They called air dominant people sanguine, and they were associated with the red bile. They called water dominant people phlegmatic, and they were associated with the white bile. And they called earth dominant people melancholic, and they were associated with the black bile. So this is just me breaking down just them from a general level, but we're gonna get deeper and deeper and deeper. But first, before I break this down, you have to understand four conditions and the four qualities. So we understand the four elements: fire, air, water, and earth. But you're gonna have to understand how the four qualities and the four conditions create these four elements, because it's gonna allow you to understand the transition point between each element, how they're connected and how they're disconnected. This is why you will see some arguments like why are fire signs similar to why fire signs are similar to water signs. Both of them are emotional, but in different ways. Or why air signs are similar to earth signs, since both of them are about practicality, but they're practical in a different ways. So we're gonna get started. So fire is hot and dry. Hotness means to activate, to be excited, to expand, to circulate. This is what fire signs are known for. They're hot. They don't like to stay still. Stillness represents cold. Fire signs are not cold. They're hot. This is why they like to move around. This is what makes them similar to air signs. Both of them like to move around. And guess who doesn't like to move around as much as fire signs and air signs? The people who are ruled by the quality of coldness. Who? Water and earth signs. But fire is not only hot, fire is also dry, and dryness gives the quality of being separated and being objective. This is why fire signs tend to separate themselves from society, from this realm of reality, since they have this vision, this imagination, this flaming bush, which allow them to separate from the overall water bubble we're all swimming in, which I call Pisces, the 12th house, the subconscious mind, that we're all swimming in together. So fire signs are dry because they are subjective and they like to separate from reality. But not all fire signs are like that. Aries specifically are probably the most lone wolf out of all the fire signs, compared to Sagittarius, who are more adaptable and flexible. They could hang out with people and things like that. And Leo too. Leo and Sagittarius are more social compared to Aries. So fire is hot and dry, and fire signs back then were called caloric. But people who are dominant in fire energy, caloric people, were dominant in the yellow bile. But the yellow bile is a very specific thing. But first I gotta break down how does the fire plays out in different organs and things of that nature. And later I'm gonna break down how the 12 houses actually allow you to understand this deeper. So fire represent our digestive enzymes, the secretions, the innate heat of the metabolism. All this is fire. This allows you to burn food, which is earth element. You break down food through your digestive enzymes, which has the quality of hotness. And once heat is generated from your muscles play a big factor when it comes to warming up your body. Just think about working out and how does exercising your muscle makes you feel. It makes you feel warm. When you get the blood pump, it makes you feel warm and things of that nature. The heart and the blood, all these organs plays such an important role in keeping our body warm. This is why the heart and the blood represent Leo the fifth house, which is fixed fire, and it's important for it to be fixed to keep our body always internal. And this area right here of your body is called the summer season, which is created to Leo the fifth house, Cancer the fourth house, and Virgo the sixth house. And all this is your summer season. This is why it's so important for your body to keep your vital organs warm. Your brain and your neurons produces the fire element, the heat. This is why your brain and neurons play out as Aries the first house, which produces cardinal fire, creating new ways of seeing and feelings about things. And specifically the fire element or the yellow bile play out specifically as bilirubin, which is the fluid that is the results of iron metabolism when the body breaks down hemoglobin, which is a protein found in the red blood cells that carry oxygen. So people who are very dominant in fire energy, what they found out, they have such a high metabolism, they tend to sweat more and things of that nature. This is why it's easier for fire signs to lose weight, and it's easier for them, well, I don't want to say it's easier for them to gain weight, but it's easier for them to lose weight and gain muscle and be leaner and be more athletic as opposed to other signs like say water signs and things of that nature. Not trying to say water signs are lazy, but water signs will be into things like yoga, stretching, team sports, and things of that nature. So bilirubin plays a very important role in our health because it's produced by our liver and it's stored in our gallbladder, and it allows us to break down fat and some stuff that we can't break down with our digestive system. So bilirubin plays a big factor when it comes to digesting food. But if you have fire signs and you dominate in fire, what's gonna happen is that you could experience the negative side of this, which is overproducing bilirubin. What it could does, it could create some form of sickness. I believe they call it jadency, or I'm not too sure. I don't think I'm pronouncing it correctly, but it's an issue where you produce too much yellow bile, bilirubin, and then the mucus, the white of your eyes start to turn yellow and your skin starts to turn yellow. This is your body trying to tell you you're producing too much bilirubin, and that's something happens to fire signs or people who utilize too much fire energy. So it's important to understand this, and it's appropriate to understand how when to utilize fire energy. For example, fire could be utilized when you're exercising. When you're exercising, what do you think you're doing? You're just heating up your body. You're sweating, your heart is pumping, your muscles are moving. All this is fire. This is why also they recommend spicy food for people if they want to clean out their body. It helps. Spicy food help to protect you against coldness, the flu, and things of that nature because you're eating fire. So you could see how you could use the fire element physically, but you could also eat the fire element. And you could also create the fire element within you if you could come up with a hard-ass imagination, a vision, and things like that. So it plays out mentally and also biologically. Next, we have air. Air is created through the qualities of hotness and wetness. So they share the same qualities, hotness, but the difference is that air signs, even though they like to be energetic, they like to circulate, they like to move around, like to expand, just like fire signs, they're wet as opposed to fire signs who are dry. This is why fire signs, they like to separate themselves. Air signs, they like to take that hotness, that circulation energy, and connect with everybody. They want to connect, they want to communicate. This is what make air signs thrive. If you prevent the air sign from communicating, it's almost like you're constricting their ability to breathe. You can make an air sign suffocate if you prevent them from communicating to everybody. If you ever been in a relationship with a air sign. So air signs were called back then sanguine people, and they were dominant. They ruled the red bile. So air represent the lungs, the chest, the thorax, the veins, the arteries, the meridians, the astrocytes, all cavities and open spaces that allow for the movement and the function of air. But specifically the red bile is the blood and the hemoglobin, basically your blood flow. And they found out air signs, when it comes to their health issues, they dealt with red bile issues, since the red bile is what carry oxygen. So if air element represents your ability to think, debate, and things of that nature, imagine if you're someone who's always thinking, overthinking, over analyzing, like a Gemini or a Virgo. What's gonna happen to your blood? Your blood is, you're gonna start rattling your blood. You're gonna start getting nervous. Your body's gonna start producing cortisol hormones, which is gonna affect your blood flow and things of that nature. But either way, we're gonna come back to it. Water is wet and cold. So water people, they share the same quality of wetness with air dominant people. So both water and air dominant people, they like to connect, they like to socialize, they like to meet people and things of that nature. They thrive in social environment. But what separates air dominant people and water dominant people is that water dominant people, they like to take their time. They like to feel people. They like to absorb them. This is what makes them seem as empathic. They want to swim with you in your emotional water. If you ever been in like an emotional situation, you go talk to a water sign, and a water sign will show you how to flow in your own emotion, things of that nature. But this is what makes them different than air signs, who are wet, want to connect and be social and network, but they do it in a hot way, in an energetic way, and a quick way. This is why it seems like air signs, they jump from one person to another person, and not care about the other person they met previously. This is what a lot of people like to say, as air signs are like, they don't care, they're assholes and things of that nature. It's not that. This is ruled by the element of air. And if you think of air, air does not like to be stagnated. Air likes to go everywhere. And air signs, they think the same way. They like to jump from one thought to another thought to another thought to another idea to another idea. Have you ever met a Gemini or Aquarius or a fucking Libra? So water is wet and cold. Water signs were a water dominant people. They used to call them phlegmatic, and they were associated with the white bile. But water represent all the vital flows in our body, which is, you probably already know that, since our body is like 80% water, which makes sense since the earth is a water planet. So as within, so without. So our body is going to be similar to a plant we live on. But especially water elements represent the phlegm, the mucus, the plasma, the lymph, and the synovial fluid. The synovial fluid is the fluid that exists within your joints that prevent your joints from grinding on each other, which causes pain. So synovial fluid allows lubrication to happen, so you can actually move your joints, your shoulders, your wrists, and things of that nature. But specifically, the white bile plays out through the mucus of our digestive system. So the white bile the white bile protects our digestive system, because we have a acid in our digestive system, and what prevent acid from burning right through our stomach is the mucus. So you shouldn't look at mucus as a bad thing, since in our modern day, a lot of us heard about mucus from Dr. Sabian, things of that nature. But it's not really about mucus. It's all about balance. We tend to do a lot of stuff that makes us develop mucus, so we call mucus the problem. But mucus actually plays a big factor when it comes to protecting your body. Like I was saying, mucus protects your digestive system. In your respiratory system, you have a mucus that prevents pathogen and dirt and germs from going, internalizing inside your own body. So your respiratory system plays as one of the most important factors when it comes to like your immune system. And the mucus catches all these bad stuff. This is why the respiratory system is representative through Gemini, the third house. But what's after Gemini, the third house? The respiratory system. Cancer, the fourth house, which is what? The lymphatic immune system. But we also have the genourinary tract, which is essentially the kidneys and the reproductive working together. And that organ gotta be ruled by water, because this is the same organs that allow us to get rid of waste, urinate, defecate, secrete waste. Could you imagine if these elements these areas that allow us to produce waste and things of that nature were not ruled by the water element? And by this I mean our body requires fluidity so we could get rid of waste. If you eat too much spicy food, what's gonna happen is that you're eating a lot of fire element. And if you're someone who went to Chipotle or something like that, you could confess that going to the washroom is gonna be some sort of trouble, because you're gonna feel the heat as it comes out from your reproductive organs, aka Scorpio, the 8th house. So that's how the water element plays out in like the genourinary tract, which is the kidneys and the reproductive organs working together. But you can also think of the quality of the kidneys. Our kidneys play a big factor when it comes to managing our blood pressure, which is fluid too. But they also control the water ion concentration in our system. Just that they're very important. The water element gets also played out through the lymphatic and immune system, because it cleans out your body and it protects you against pathogen. The brain and the spinal cord are made of a white substance or white matter or gray matter that allows sounds to be transferred and allows your body, your brain and nervous system to get rid of waste and things of that nature. Even though I like to associate the brain and nervous system with the element of fire, since the brain and nervous system are ruled by Aries, the first house. Semen, sperm, this is fluid, all that. But also, interesting fact, in a female uterus, if I remember correctly, for a female to be able to develop a child, there's lymph that gonna surround that child or the baby as he develops his own body. This is important because the lymph is gonna protect the child. The water element is gonna protect the child. It's gonna help him keep the environment clean so he could actually develop his own body. This is why water science, sextile earth science, which create a formation factor. So if every time you end up utilizing too much water energy, what's gonna happen is that you could use earth energy to give it some structures and things of that nature, which is a kind of a whole nother topic. But earth element gets created through coldness and dryness. So this is what makes water and earth similar. Water is cold just like earth, which make both of them have a calmer personality. They like to be more chilled. They don't like to be as chaotic as fire signs as air signs, which what fire signs and air signs share together, that chaos masculine factor. And water and earth, they share that feminine yin formation factor, internalizing, receiving. So with fire and air, you externalize. With water and earth, you internalize, but you do it in a couple of different ways. But the difference here is that earth dominant people, they are not only cold but they're dry. So they like to relax, they like to be calmed down, but they like to separate themselves from reality, from people, stay away. This is why they seem as loners and things like that. This is actually what earth signs share with fire signs, but they're just cold because they want to separate themselves from society so they could practicalize, come up with what makes sense and things of that nature. While fire signs, they do the opposite. They separate so they come up with a vision or imagination to burn through physical reality. So earth is cold and dry. Earth signs were called melancholic. The black represented, and they represent the black bile. Earth represent all the dense, solid, deeper parts of our body, the bones, the joints, the structure of the connective tissue, the bone marrow, the nervous tissue, the teeth, the gums, our hair, our nails, all this earth element, everything you touch physically, this is the earth element in your body. But the black bile plays out as the liquid carbon glucose, which is ATP, which is what you utilize to process yourself. So right now I'm gonna break it down. How does the 4 elements get played out through the 12 houses of the 12 zodiac signs? This will allow you to understand each element in a deeper way, but also allow you to understand each body part or organ in a deeper way too. Because I was just journalizing how each element is connected to certain organs. But once you understand how the 12 houses could separate your body in a much more deeper way, you could really become your own doctor. And I'm not saying that like you could like break your arm and heal it and things of that nature, which most likely you probably can. But like if you break your bones and things of that nature, you should definitely go to a doctor. But when it comes to flu, diabetes, and things of that nature, you might want to avoid these type of things due to the pharmaceutical companies and things of that nature. There's a lot of natural alternative you should look into before you consider the pharmaceutical companies for anything. But either way, so the fire elements get played out through 3 different houses, 3 different organs. That's for each element. So the fire energy get played out through the first house, Aries, which creates carnal fire, which represent initiating new ways and seeing and feeling. This is why Aries, the first house, represents your brain. What does your brain does? It produces nervous signals. It produces visions, heat, and things like that. And what happens when you're, as a spirit and observer, overutilize your first house? You get a headache, because you overuse, you're creating inflammation and things of that nature. But either way, fire energy gets played out through what? Leo, the fifth house, which is fixed fire, being fixated and being determined about expressing our imagination, our visions, and our intuition. This is why Leo deal with the stage. But Leo represent the heart and the circulatory system, which pumps blood to keep our body warm, and it's the king of the jungle. And if Leo does not do his job, the whole body will fall down. This is why a lot of people like to say this is why the heart is stronger than the brain. Like I heard, the heart produces more electromagnetism than the brain. And if the brain is Aries, the first house, and Leo, the fifth house, is fixed fire versus cardinal fire, you could see who could win in the battle of producing fire. I'm not trying to say that Aries cannot keep up with Leo, or Leo cannot keep up with Aries, because they have two different jobs, but it's how fire gets played out differently. And fire also get played out finally through Sagittarius, the ninth house, which represent our muscular system, which I said earlier, it generates heat. But not only that, Sagittarius are ruled by Jupiter. Jupiter is what control the condition of acidic versus alkalinity within our body. So if we allow ourselves to develop too much acidity and things of that nature, we're going to experience inflammation, which is something very big for Sagittarius, since they are very reckless and restless with their body, and they kind of tend to overindulge in food, alcohol, and that tends to put a wear and tear in their body and damage the liver and things of that nature. So you can see how the fire gets played out differently, and it gets played out through different organs. And you can see how, if you understand what's the house mean, by default understand what the organ means, because it's about the speculative energy first, then it plays out biologically, operatively. Yin, yang, feminine, masculine, speculative, operative, non-physical, physical. And you could keep going. Female, male, so on and so on. So air element plays out through three different houses. It plays out first through Gemini, the third house. What is Gemini, the third house? It's our respiratory system. This is the system that allows us to communicate, breathe oxygen, and things of that nature. And since it's ruled by Gemini, the third house, dealing with communication, debating, early education, being flexible and adaptable with the way we communicate, which get played out through the lungs as us having different breathing patterns. We could breathe deeply, or we could breathe in a shallow manner. So Gemini, or the third house, representing the respiratory system, you could see the mutable quality of the air in it. But also, since Gemini, they deal with communication, language is, a lot of people don't think about that, but language is a breathing exercise. Every time you push out the words, you're creating air and things of that nature. And if you speak one of those languages with a lot of vowels, like if you read holy scriptures, they like to sing their Bible. They like to sing their Bible, Quran, Bhagavad Gita verses for a reason. So that's Gemini, the third house, getting played out through the respiratory system. But then we got Libra, the seventh house, which is initiating, giving birth to ideas, thoughts, but ideas and thoughts and ways of thinking about what relationship and ways of balancing things out, marriages, contracts, and things like that. This is why Libra is the balancer, or is a representation of the scale of Ma'at in the Egyptian culture, because they balance things out, but it plays out through your kidneys. Because think about it, you have two kidneys and they balance out what? The blood pressure in your body, but they also balance many other things in your body. So the speculative energy play out physically. And finally, we have Aquarius, the 11th house, which get played out physically as the astrocytes, or the meridian system in the Chinese medicine. So Aquarius energy is all about being fixated and determined in the way we can externalize our communication, our knowledge, the way we think, but doing it while being unique, rebellious, but also knowing how to associate ourselves among many individuals. So that energy gets played out through the organs of the meridian systems as channels that allow energy to flow our body, but also that allow us to connect many organs through one system. And this is why the Chinese, they use acupuncture, or many healing methods to affect the meridian system, which create biochemical changes in our body. Now we have the water element. The water element gets played up through Cancer, the fourth house, which is our lymphatic immune system. Cancers, they like to initiate new ways about feeling the emotion and making themselves feel comfortable in their family, close up proximity, and things of that nature. And if they can't do that, they're gonna go chaotic and they're gonna go crazy. This is why Mars is debilitated in Cancer. But Cancer, the fourth house, plays out as the lymphatic and immune system, which what it protects our body. Your lymphatic immune system gotta be always ready to fight a pathogen and toxins to protect you. Cardinal water, Cancer. But we also have the eighth house, Scorpio, which is fixed water, representing being fixated and determined in the way we pay attention to our feelings, connect with the emotion, but do it in a deep, dark, behind the scene type of way. This is why Scorpios, they don't necessarily deal with sex, but they deal with everything that is behind the water. This is like the bottom of the water, the mysticism, the occult, and things of that in nature. Scorpios tend to get they're trying to get into the deep root of the thing so they could transform it and things of like that. This is why they're ruled by Pluto, but also this is why Uranus is exalted in Scorpio. But physically, it plays out as our reproductive organs, which allow us to reproduce, but also plays a big factor when it comes to our hormonal system, especially during the time of puberty, since it plays out as our reproductive organs, our testicles and our ovaries, which provide us with hormones. But also, the water element get played out as the 12th house Pisces. What does the 12th house Pisces represent from a speculative point of view? It represents being flexible, adaptable with our emotions, our feelings, our visions, and our imagination, but also giving meaning and reasoning to these feelings and imagination that we're receiving. This is why a lot of people like to look at Pisces as visionary, dreamy, but also they could be seen as delusional and things of that nature. But it plays out physically as the organ that is responsible to act as our first immune system, since what separate our physical organs from the physical external world what separate our internal organs from the physical reality is our skin. Our skin is the barrier that prevent pathogen and things from walking inside our body. This is why it gotta be a water sign, because water energy plays out as the same thing that is responsible to keep our emotional health healthy, which actually emotional health has a direct corresponding to how well you could cleanse your body, because you're gonna notice how people who have a lot of toxins build up, they don't know how to deal with emotions. And when you don't know how to deal with emotions, you cannot release all the water toxins within your body. But the 12th house Pisces trine Cancer, the 4th house. So Pisces, the 12th house, act as an immune system through a 120-degree relationship with Cancer, the 4th house. This is why there's certain proteins in your skin, I believe they call them keratins, and when they get triggered, they could go immediately to your lymphatic immune system, Cancer, and communicate with it to tell it what's happening or prepare it to develop white blood cells and way of protecting your body. So every house, every sign is like they work together through trines, squares, opposition. But first you have to understand what each sign represent, what each house represent. Then you can understand through the trines, the squares, how each organs work together. It's like they're deities and they're talking inside your body. Your brain's ears, the first house, gotta talk to the heart, Leo, and then Leo, the 5th house, gotta talk to the digestive system, Virgo, and then Virgo, the 6th house, gotta talk to Pisces, the 12th house, because they oppose each other. And it's a very interesting way to understand biology and relationship. So I definitely recommend for you guys to study astrobiology. Not astrobiology. Well, that's what I call medical astrology. I like to call medical astrology as astrobiology. So right now we're in the earth element. The earth element gets played out as the second house Taurus, which deal with our value, our material possession, materialism, money, and things of that nature. Things that we could touch with the 5 senses, things of that nature, which play out biologically as a hormonal system, which is very important to maintain our stress level. A lot of people in our modern day, they experience a lot of stress and they make the hormonal system produce a lot of cortisol, epinephrine, adrenaline. This is because they did not focus on in their earth element. Now, I'm not saying that you're gonna be materialistic or you're gonna be someone who overvalues stuff or someone who live in the money world. All I'm just trying to say is that you should develop your money, your assets, your value, what you really want out of life, so you don't go chasing stuff that could stress you out. Expensive cars, expensive houses, all these things will stress you out and stress out the hormonal system towards the second house. This is why it's important to develop your value system. What do you value? Your hormonal system, your endocrine system is depending on it. And then the earth element gets also played out through the sixth house Virgo, which is our digestive system. Virgo, the sixth house, deal with being flexible and adaptable when it comes to practicalizing, making sense, looking at the details of things, and that deal with health, routines, and patterns, which is something very big with our digestive system, since our digestive system tends to be very complex. Our digestive system is not just us breaking down food. Our digestive system is the whole process. Us chewing is us. Is the mechanical digestion part, which is your digestive has to move the food in a certain way to break it down mechanically, physically, then add in the chemical digestion. This is why Virgos, they tend to suffer from digestive issues, because when they utilize the energy of the sixth house too much, paying attention and overthinking, is gonna really affect the nerves and fuck up their digestive system. This is why you see a lot of Virgos become like vegans and things of that nature. But the key is that first you have to fix your mental health issues. And I could tell you this for a fact because I'm a moon Virgo. I'm on Mars in Virgo, and my dad has a moon Virgo too, and he suffer from severe digestive system issues right now. Because Virgos, they think too much. They're ruled by Mercury, which they kind of fuck them up a lot. And finally, the Earth element gets played out through Capricorn, the 10th house. What is Capricorn, the 10th house? Capricorn, the 10th house represents our skeleton system. And since it represents our skeleton system, Capricorn, the 10th house represent initiating, giving birth to infrastructure. What makes sense? Business, our status, the word we stand on, and Mars is exalted there. So we're chasing after that. We want to be basically we want to be the goat. We want to climb a mountain, and we want to be seen as the goat. This is why people call rappers people the goat, because it's a reference to Capricorn, the 10th house. So Capricorn, the 10th house, plays out biologically as our bones. Your bones are constantly remodeling and reconstructing each other, but you don't pay attention to it because your bones do it in a very macro level. You don't pay attention to it. But this is why it has to be carnal, because you're constantly replacing old bones with new bones. But the process takes so long to happen that you don't pay attention to it, because the size of your bones when right now is different when you were a kid. But because your bones take a very long time to grow, but also a very long time to heal if you ever had a bone injury and things like that, compared to a muscle injury. And when you think about the fact that Capricorn are ruled by Saturn, and Saturn takes a very long time to it takes a very long time for the sun to reach Capricorn house, which we're gonna call Saturn. That's a whole another topic. So for a full year is basically what we call Saturn, and this is why it takes your body, your bones, such a long time to develop or fix themselves, because they're ruled by Saturn, and Saturn takes time to it takes time for Saturn to rotate around us and things of that nature. So you can see how you could connect the speculative with the physical, and this is how you could become your own doctor. But first you have to understand the psychological ramification, then you could study the biological ramification, and you can see how everything is intertwined together, how everything is connected. That's because the people back then in the ancient world, China, Egypt, Africa, America, the Vatican Church or whatever, they were studying these stuff because they realized if we could copy nature, if we could act like fire elements, we could act like air, water, and earth, which we always do. But right now we're kind of being very dysfunctional for this being we live inside right now. But they understood back then if we could know how to organize ourselves, for example, put fire signs there, put earth signs there, put water signs there, and things of that nature, categorizing things, giving fire signs a job for fire, giving air signs a job for air, and things of that nature, understanding how to categorize food, understanding how to categorize people psychologically, understanding how to create a family through the elements and things of that nature. This is how you create a society or a civilization that's biosymmetrical to nature. So either way, thank you for listening. This was Harith, and if you would like to go to our page, which is going to be in the link down below, to check out any of our services, I offer medical astrology, but we also offer natal chart breakdown, the 12 houses, transits, and things of that nature. So thank you for listening.